Welcome back. This is part 2. In the first video, part 1, we did the marquetry on the 2 door panels, and now we need to connect the stems on those 2 door stiles. There's 5 pieces. We're going to be using an inlay technique with a small router. Let's get started. All right, to start, I can use my drawing to figure out the radius length. And here I just need an approximate location so I can add some tape. That way the point of my trammel will grip better. And this is a trammel. It's called a marking gauge from Thurwell Tools. I'll leave a link in the description. I love that thing. It is multifunctional, beautiful tool. And here I'm just striking an arc, trying to figure out the exact radius, because if you think about it, there are actually 2 radiuses, the outside of the stem and then the inside, and they're slightly different since the stems are tapered, right? A little bit tricky. Now I'm going to be using a trammel on a small router to create those inlay cavities, but I want some pencil lead just to know, just so that I know that I'm on the right track when I start to make the cuts. And I believe I'm using a 0.7 millimeter lead, and in hindsight, I could have used something smaller, 0.5 or even 0.3, right? It needs to be accurate. Now, I believe that the rails are flush with the door panels and the stiles are slightly higher. So that gave me a little bit of slack. And really, I'm only going in about a 1/16 of an inch deep, so it's not a very deep inlay. What counts is that everything remains precise and lined up. Now, if I remember right, the goal here was to create the arch of each stem on the outside. That way I could make a taper by cutting the inside by, making another pass and moving the trammel a little bit, or I could even use a sharp chisel. Now, I don't know if you noticed or not, but the first arc I made, the pivot point was off the door. The second one I have to make is directly on the door, and this is how I handled it. So I took some 1/8 inch material, counterbored a hole big enough for the head of a roofing nail, drilled a hole for the shank of that roofing nail, and epoxied it into place. Then I was able to position the center of the nail by utilizing my Thurwell tool trammel points and clamp down that 1/8 inch piece. It worked amazingly well. I was able to position the nail precisely where I wanted and create these beautiful arced, tapered inlay cavities. And speaking of trammels, this 1/4 inch trammel on this small plunge router, it worked really well, and I believe I was using a 1/16 downcut spiral router bit. I have to admit, it was a big relief to get that part done, finished, and everything aligned. Then I had to create the little cavity for the half leaf. That was pretty straightforward, just hogging out most of the material. And I didn't show it, but I had slipped in a 3/32 spacer right in that shadow groove to prevent tear out. Probably not necessary, but don't want to take any chances at this point. Then, of course, used my smallest chisel and gouge to clean things up. And here, I'm not really sure why I lined that up with a door edge, but I did. Then utilizing a pencil to get a tracing of that half leaf. And I tried matching the grain the best I could and cut out the piece. This is what I call my belt sander dock, and I use this thing all the time. I have a large edge sander, but this one's just easier to control. Sometimes the direction of spin is preferable, and I can sneak up on the tiniest of lines because I can utilize finer grits that I don't have for my larger edge sander. And I can sand straight edges or convex edges like I'm doing here. And then I intentionally made the design of this to be adjustable, so I can loosen these bolts, slide the platform away, give it some slack, and this belt sander has a curved platen. You can see it there. Fantastic. We'll slip a belt on, probably a 180, something pretty smooth. I don't want to take too much material. I want to sneak up on that line. Slip that dude in place. and then bring the platform just up to it where I'll have a steady area to hold that small piece. Works amazingly well. And with the majority of inlays that I do, if not all of them, I put a slight back bevel, not too big of an angle, just a few degrees. And sometimes you need to utilize a pair of pliers to hang on to them. Now, I need to add a very typical way of doing inlay is to cut your inlay piece or your insert piece first. Then you would carefully tack that down, lightly tack that down with glue, then cut around that insert piece, remove the insert piece, and then cut out the cavity. I couldn't really use that method because I needed a precise alignment of those stems going from one door across the stiles into the other door, so this approach worked best for me. A good friend bought this for me. It looks like a toy, but I keep it sharp and use it often. A woodworking video by Ramon Valdez just isn't complete unless I break out a belt sander, right? Add some pencil marks and a low raking light to keep track of my progress. I'm probably hitting this with 180, so sneaking up on getting everything nice and flush. Oh, I switched belts, so I probably started with 120 or 150 and then 180. But yeah. And that particular style is a tad higher than the rails, so I don't have to worry about cross grain scratches. I do remember being super pleased at this point. Bit of a side note here, when I posted this on Instagram, I got a lot of questions about the groove or the 3/32 reveal around the panel. This is how I did it. Of course, the door panels were made of Baltic birch. I created a rabbet all the way around the perimeter with a rabbeting bit, and then I simply cut walnut strips to go around the perimeter, mitered at the corners. I'll show you a very good quality sample here in a bit on exactly how this works. And I like writing down the time of glue up. Sometimes you use it. All right. These are coming out good. I'm doing one at a time. I've got plenty to do, so I'll just glue one. And then I go work on something else. But I wanted to show you when I'm starting, for instance, on this particular one, I started with this piece, glued it on, then this one, then this one. Came around to here, and this might not show up on camera very well. There's a gap right here, but that is insignificant. What I want are tight miters. So I intentionally did that because this gap doesn't matter, but these will. So by leaving a little bit of gap there, I can pull this piece of walnut tight to each joint with tape. That holds it in place temporarily. Then I add these cowls for good pressure this way, and then use the squeeze clamps to hold everything in place. And then this is slightly proud, of course, right? And I'll run a belt sander to get all that flush, and then we can veneer the top. I actually ended up running them through my drum sander, which worked really well. All right, so I found this sample style, top rail, corner of the door, so there's a handle, and then the panel, right? Baltic birch, veneer on the back, balance sheet. Of course, the grain on this Baltic birch is going this direction, and these finish veneers are perpendicular to that. And then here you can see that solid wood on the corner. Rabbeted it in. Fantastic, right? That goes on there like that. Beautiful 3/32 shadow line that will stay that way seasonally. Man, I love that. Woohoo! That is it. And the cabinet parts were actually pre-finished. That's why the legs are darker, because of the conversion varnish. All right, and some finished photos. You can see those knots down at the bottom of those door panels. 8 pieces of veneer, and that grain carries through all the way across. I love that about veneer. Infinite possibilities. You know, solid wood has its place, but with veneer, it opens up a whole new world. And here and there, you can catch a glimpse inside that recess or that shadow line. It's solid wood in there, and the reveals of the doors around the perimeter and between them will never change. I'm always surprised how surprised I am when a piece is finished, even though when I started, this was a big challenge for me. And I say that because primarily with this marquetry, there was no place to hide. It's a silhouette motif, and every little discrepancy would show up. I ended up putting my logo here, and that number is actually the date of completion. As requested by the customer, a couple of rollouts, and these handles were actually an afterthought. I thought it would be a little bit easier to grab the rollouts to open them. That is figured beech for drawer bottoms. Dovetail drawers. These are drawers on the back side. And the reason there's drawers there is because she needed a place for her remote controls. So from this position, the left end goes against the wall. The other three sides are open. I wanted these two drawers to just kind of disappear, and they only open so much. There's this magnetic key that I made. Yeah. It releases a magnet right there. Releases a little mechanism, allows the drawer to come out or to have access to the secret stash. I love stuff like that, and I'm currently working on an ebook that will be called Hidden in Plain Sight that'll have a lot of these little stash spots, right? Everyone loves a stash spot. This is probably the first time that I've used this combination of wenge and walnut, but I really love the results. And the doors were a rift sawn and then plain sawn walnut for the rest of the components. So you may have noticed the two drawers in the back didn't have drawer guides, but these rollouts I knew would have a little bit of a load in them, so I used an undermount soft close. And right in here on a magnet is where the key lives. More concealed magnets to keep the doors closed. Anyway, thanks a ton for watching. I hope you enjoyed the process as much as I did. Make your day great, yeah?